Hey everyone, I hope you're all doing well today. This time we are going to be talking about Firewatch. The story of Firewatch is terrific. It's essentially a linear tale, but you do have some dialogue options to kind of change the way your character is perceived in the world. You also get that gut punch right at the very beginning where your character is set up and you get your reasons for why you're kind of escaping your problems and going off into the woods. This is going to end up being a recurring theme for many of the characters in this game. The main character of Firewatch is Henry. This is the person that you're going to be playing as. And he took a job as I believe it's a fire watcher, but it could be something different. He's not technically a park ranger or anything like that. He's just kind of a lookout in a fire tower. His wife was diagnosed with early onset dementia, and his life just falls apart after that as he tries to deal with her illness and tries to really just keep everything together. You do have a few dialogue options which will change the intro a little bit, but essentially you're going to end up in this fire tower and you're going to have to, basically deal with your problems at some point. The majority of the game takes place in this national park, and your only real interaction with people is when you talk to Delilah on the phone. There are two girls who are just running crazy throughout the park at the very beginning, but you don't talk to them very much. And there is one more character that we'll talk about in a little bit, but you never really interact with anyone. You don't actually see any people in this, which is kind of creepy and also kind of awesome at the same time. Over the course of the game, you find out that somebody's basically spying on you and also listening in on your conversations with Delilah. This might sound a little weird now, but if you had a radio, you could tune into someone's frequency, and there was the potential to actually hear what was going on. Delilah will also give you tasks early on, just to have you go and do certain things for her. These sort of act as a pseudo-tutorial for what is a relatively simple game. As I mentioned, you'll find a lot of strange things in the park as you're going along, and you also learn about one of the other people who worked at the station. His name is Ned, and he had a son named Brian who was along with him. If I'm remembering all of this right, Delilah says that both of them went missing, and she just hasn't heard back from them. And then later on you find out that Brian died during a caving accident, and Ned is the one who disappeared. There's a lot more that goes into this, like Brian not really wanting to be there, Ned trying to deal with his own personal loss, and Brian also trying to deal with that as well. And Brian not really being the son that Ned wants, and, just being interested in different stuff. The two of them just never seem to really kind of connect in the way that you would expect a father and son to, have a common interest and that sort of thing. But it is clear that Ned does love Brian, but Brian just never really got that, as Ned was trying to get him interested in what he liked. Delilah kind of fills you in on more of the backstory, as she had more interactions with Brian than you did, because Brian's dead when you get there, but yeah, she talked to Brian a lot more. And she kind of has to deal with this as well, because she had the option to get Brian out of there because he wasn't supposed to be there. And she kind of deals with his loss in her own way. This is where just this idea of loss comes up, as you find out these three characters, Henry, Delilah, and Ned, are all dealing with personal loss in different ways, or they're dealing with different versions of loss, and they all sort of handle it in a very similar way by retreating to something else and not really dealing with it. Ned goes into hiding and continues to watch the area where Brian died. Delilah turns to alcohol and also runs off into the woods as well. And you're following the same path as them, not to the same extreme as Ned or falling into alcoholism like Delilah, as your character had already been there and done that. But you are also running away from dealing with your wife's illness. You're not taking responsibility for what you're doing, and you're heading off into the woods as well. While all of this is going on, a forest fire gets started. It's fairly far away when it does get set, and Delilah tells you, yeah, the only thing we can really do is watch this. And you do get some really cool shots of it, especially at night, when you can just kind of see what's going on out there. It's pretty interesting that this fire is always burning in the background, and it doesn't really become an issue until the very end. So at the end of your story, you're basically trying to evacuate. You need to just run to this cable car and get the hell out of there. However, you also can go and see what Ned was up to. You can kind of learn more about him, which is pretty awesome. But you really do just need to get the hell out of there. Like, the smoke's all in the air and everything, and that's kind of when the entire story of Ned and Brian really gets revealed to you. So it's a really cool ending, and it is left sort of open-ended, so you can kind of decide for yourself how each of these three people really end up. It's pretty fun. Firewatch is basically a walking simulator, which is a genre that I feel gets kind of a bad rap. It is just a modern interpretation of an adventure game. You have a bunch of puzzles thrown at you, you do a lot of exploration, and combat is kept to a minimum so that you can focus on the story. And the story is really what you're here for. You don't have a lot of real flexibility in what you're going to be doing. You can freely explore this and deal with the story at any point. So if you want, you can spend most of your time just wandering around staring at the very beautiful landscape. Or you can just rush through the story. You don't even have to deal with Delilah at all. You can just completely ignore her throughout the entire game and just focus on the goals that you need to achieve. Because she's still going to tell you, hey, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this, and you can just go out and perform those tasks and completely ignore what she's saying over the radio. The only real annoying thing is when you're following this really stupid beeping device around, and you're supposed to find like these little spots, and yeah, I hated following that beeping device. It gives you a direction indicator and everything, and you also have that little audio cue of the beeps, but man, did I find that way more annoying than just following a path or moving to a specific X on the map. That beeping thing can go to hell as far as I can say. But aside from that, it is a very relaxing game to just walk around in and see the environment and try to figure out different paths to get to wherever you need to go. There are a few blocked paths in this, and once you get the axe, you can actually clear spots in order to just get to certain places faster. So, yeah, it's a really fun game. I like the gameplay in Firewatch quite a bit. It's just a really relaxing game for the most part, even when the game is trying to ratchet up the tension or kind of creep you out with the idea that there's somebody spying on you. I never really felt scared or worried in this game at all. It was just really fun to go through all this, figure out ways to solve all the fairly simple puzzles, and just explore everything that the developers put into this. The game takes place in a national park, and everything just looks really good. I love how this game looks, especially when the sun is going down and everything gets like really kind of reddish in that color. It just looks really cool. There were a few times when I was having trouble navigating to like key locations, especially when I had that stupid beeping piece of shit. Sorry. It is one of the problems with having a larger map like this. Sometimes you can kind of get lost, especially when you're dealing with that stupid beeping device. Thankfully, you do have a map, and you can mark out where the trails are if you open up the supply boxes and copy down all the different trails from the map. On the last day, you have to move through all of this smoke and fire and everything. This is something that kind of makes it a little difficult to see at times. I don't remember it being a huge problem while I was playing it, but it does kind of obscure your vision. Thankfully, the map isn't bothered by this at all, so you can hold that pretty close and get to wherever you need to go. Even though there is fire in this, you're not really rushing to get out. You honestly don't need to rush at all through the game, as you can just sort of walk around and really admire the scenery, because everything that's put in here looks really cool. Some of the things in the building, I will say this, in some of the buildings, a few of the objects don't look as good when you get up close, but then once you examine them, they come into better focus, so that's kind of cool. I really love the graphics in this. The paths through the woods, sorry, as I'm stumbling over my words here, and also the meadows and everything like that. All the paths look pretty easy to see. Some of the shortcuts are a little bit harder, but when you move closer to them, you do see an indication that you can move your way through, so that's kind of cool. It's also nice that it displays everything for you, so when you get close to something that you can press a button on in order to perform an action, that got displayed to me, so that was kind of great. But yeah, the atmosphere is just very relaxing. Even when the game's trying to be scary, it still feels very kind of warm and relaxing whenever I'm going through this. Even at night, it doesn't feel that bad. Almost like every single night when you play this, there's a full moon, so it's very bright out. It's kind of cool, but that's one of those things where I feel like if they were trying to make a horror game, that would have been pitch black, and you should have been using your flashlight to see everything. But this never really felt like a horror game from like a visual standpoint. The narrative kind of did, but the graphics and everything, no, it never really felt like I was playing in a horror game. The story really is what carries you through this game. The puzzles, for the most part, are fairly simple and easy to figure out. The only real challenge that's in this game is following that stupid beeping device, and also moving some of the items out of the way to find the solutions to the puzzles that you need. Aside from that, you're going to be wandering around in a pretty lovely looking environment, just staring at what the developers have thrown into this park. This is a game that I wanted to try for a while, and it's kind of just been sitting in my backlog for a really embarrassing amount of time, and I'm glad that I finally played it, because Firewatch is a great game. I really didn't want this game to end. It's one of those games I wanted the story to keep going, to find out just what happened to these three people, like where Henry, Delilah, and Ned's story were going to end up, and to just see how they were going to deal with things, if they were going to keep running from their problems, or if they were going to actually get things straightened out and move on with their lives after going through the loss that they've each suffered. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments below, because I'm sure there are a lot of different interpretations for this, or people have brought their own stories to this, and they are looking at it through a different perspective. So I'd really like to hear what you guys have to say. I'll talk to you all later. Bye.